Hi, persisters and brothers. It is Lizbeth, and I have overscheduled myself lately. So it is great to be back in our current season, and we have some spectacular guests. But just a quick note, as I was speaking to my last guest today, it's a big recording day. I think I have 3 or 4 guests that I'll record and eventually post. But I was thinking about how lately life has been filled with so many meaningful work opportunities. And I am so grateful to those of you who listen to the podcast, who share it, or who comment, because I don't any longer advertise for coaching clients, really. I just naturally seem to get them. I don't go out of my way to get freelance writing jobs. They're coming my way. And more importantly, even, I am loving working on my true crime and working with survivors of crime. And part of that is coaching. Part of that is being a motivational speaker and a questioner and being interested in their stories because they are amazing folks. True crime is not for everyone. And I recognize that it can be very triggering and hard for people to hear. I like to share the stories of resilience that come through it. So if you're listening and you want to hear a story or two that I was involved in the production of in the documentaries, do send me an email at lameredith.com. Sign up for my email list, but put in the subject line true crime, and I can send you some of those links. Like I said, they're not for everyone. If it makes you queasy or it's triggering or it's just too depressing, I get it. But that's not the part I'm involved with. I see people who go through things that make my life look super easy. And it's that constant reminder that healing is available to all of us, no matter what we've been through. Only though, if we pursue it pretty intentionally and if we keep it top of mind. And if one modality of healing doesn't work, we try another. But no matter what you're going through and what you've been through, there are always options to enhance our lives and to make a difference then later in the lives of others who've walked in our shoes. So anyhow, find me at lameredith.com, sign up for my email list. Let me know if you're interested in the true crime part or whatever's new in my writing and speaking world. Thanks always for being here. I'm about to invite the amazing Erin Copelan to share her fabulous story of persistence. Love that you're here. Erin Copelan, thank you so much for being here today on Persistence U. I am tickled to have you and to hear your story. So thanks. Tell us a little bit about you now before we get started into the story behind the story.
Amazing. Thank you, Lizbeth. I'm also very excited to be here today. And I am the author of Welcome to Caregiving, the things caregivers never talk about. I was very excited that it debuted as an Amazon bestseller last year.
Yay!
So I'm super, super proud of that. And the book is exactly that. Like, I did not get fancy with the title at all. You know what they say? It's better to be clear than clever. And that's what the book is. It is all of the things caregivers never talk about.
I love it. And tell us about how that happened. How did your life shift to where you became the caregiver? You know, what was the story behind you deciding to write the book?
So I feel like caregiving happens in every generation. It's not a shocking thing, but nobody talks about it. And therefore nobody prepares for it. And my husband is, he is 25 years older than me. And so I anticipated that at some point in our lives, I would care for him. Again, not unexpected.
Sure.
I didn't expect it to be when I was 34 years old and he was only like 60. I didn't expect it then. And he was diagnosed with liver cancer. It came up very unexpectedly. We were going on a trip to Africa, which was fantastic. And so we had to go to the doctor for vaccinations and all of that kind of stuff. And his labs came back abnormal. And we went on our trip and it was fine. And we came back and they said, oh, well, didn't they tell you you have cancer? You need a transplant. Just like, boom.
Oh,
and that was the moment I became a caregiver. And for me, some people can fall into the role more easily than others. Some people just don't, which is okay. There's so many human beings. But for me, it was a no-brainer. I was going to take care of my husband. We made our decisions together, and the entire journey was well over a decade that I was his sole caregiver, for all of the procedures and surgeries he had up until he had his transplant. He was on the list for about 8 years. And then
That
there
had
were
to be scary.
It was. And we were very lucky because he was never like hospital bound sick.
Okay.
So he was able to keep working in things, but it lives in you. It lives in the back of your mind. You never know what's going to happen. You don't know what the labs are going to be. And so you just carry that with you all the time. And it wasn't until I wrote my book that I actually realized I'd been living a trauma for a decade, like every day.
Wow. Erin,
Yeah.
So you found the writing part to be therapeutic in a way, correct?
I did. And it's very interesting because I never, I didn't say at the beginning of this, I'm going to write a book about this. It was actually 2 years after his transplant. And I was going through my healing and realized there really were no resources, at least the kind that I needed, out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, and I was so alone. I felt alone. I was overwhelmed. I was helpless. Like I felt terrible during that time. And I can only describe it as just getting this ping that said, you need to write a book. You need to help other people not feel this alone. And I just started writing it. And Jerry would say to me, because I'd get up Sunday mornings, that's when I would do it, because I had my job and did, everything else. And he'd say, what are you doing? I said, oh, I'm just writing my book. And he'd go, oh, okay. And what is this book? I'm like, just about, my caregiving stuff. And he's like, okay. And some of it was very healing, but some of it really was reliving those big traumas. And it's actually even now it took me 2 years to write the book.
That's not bad. As someone who's written a book and took 2 decades,
right?
You go, girl.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
And I wrote it one way, I tried to write it another way, and I just was kind of stuck with it.
Right.
And then I thought, am I really doing this? Am I really going to choose to do this? And I say accidentally, but I don't believe anything is by accident. I met a book coach. She was fantastic. Like she and I just clicked right away. Like she was completely my people. And I hired her. And that I feel like was the moment I chose myself. And she laughed. She's like, Erin, you came to me as a writer, like you knew how to write. And so we pieced it together and got it out there. So
I love that. That's a really important thing you just said. I chose myself. And I feel like that's something, and no offense to our male listeners, but I feel like as women, we're not conditioned to choose ourselves. Typically, especially my generation, that's not what we were conditioned to do. So the first time I spent money on a writer's conference that was more than, to get there plus the conference fee was more than $1,000. And that was so huge. I felt so much shame about that at first, until I realized it really was okay to choose myself.
yeah.
No one in my life was telling me I couldn't. And yet I carried this silly weight of that. And it really is a pivotal moment when you find that it's freeing to choose yourself.
Yeah. And it's I'm getting much better at it. But yes, in that moment when I made that investment, because there was a comma.
Right.
In hiring somebody for basically a year-long coaching program to help, with the writing and putting it together and editing and like all of the things to put a book out. It was a commitment and an investment, and it was all in me. Right. And my feelings and my heart's message to help people. And so it was really uncomfortable. Like I made the decision crying from the fetal position. I'm not going to lie. Like, am I really, really doing this? And that choice was that important to me that, yeah,
That's
I
exciting.
did it.
So with the book coach, what were some of the helpful things outside of accountability to finish? What were some of the things that you feel like helped shape your story in that process?
Really helping me organize the stories. I feel like, because the stories were all there and the timeline is there, but there really is an art to storytelling.
Right.
And one of the things that people come back to me all the time with is they'll say, Erin, number one, I don't know how you write about caregiving and make me laugh so hard. And then the next second, I'm in tears. And so I really take people through that journey. And without that help, initially, I like to say, my book was very, we went here, then we did this, then I say this, then she did that. And that's not what my book sounds like.
Good.
So, using the other senses and just that kind of engagement, so the reader really feels like they're there. That's the important thing in trying to communicate a story.
That is beautiful. So when it all started to wrap up, could you feel that it was the story you wanted to tell?
It was the story I wanted to tell. And I laugh a little bit because there's a whole other story that I know I need to tell that's really about my recovery, because this book is my experience, like the nitty gritty of it, in the heart of it, what I was feeling, what I was going through, when the doctors gave diagnoses and my husband was zonked out on drugs and I didn't have any drugs.
Right.
So I carried those things. And that's the place this book is in. But I know there's another book in me that is literally my recovery from the trauma. And I've been learning more about trauma and how it resides in our bodies. If we can't finish those fight or flight cycles, it will live in us. And so the more I've learned, the more I realize, like, okay, I have more to offer here.
I love it. So is that what you're working on now?
I haven't put the pen to the paper yet, but I've been writing it in the brain, But yeah,
Good.
it's almost time to get the fingers to the keyboard.
I love that. Well, that's terrific. So today, what is your life like then?
Today, life, it is fantastic. Husband is doing great.
Good.
And he does all the regular husband things, taking out trash, working, driving me nuts when it's appropriate, all of the normal husband things. And yeah, and I'm writing, I try to create tools and resources to really help soften the caregiving journey. So I try to put out, some free PDFs. I just did one, like 5 ways to celebrate without cake or champagne. Just to help people find ways to celebrate the small things in life.
Sure.
Because when you're a caregiver, like everything, you don't know what's happening, and thinking about celebrating is the last thing on your mind. But if we're not giving appreciation to ourselves, we start to spiral in unfortunate ways. So I try to do resources like that. I created a patient handbook to help, which is a binder organizational system to help patients and caregivers communicate and help them communicate with medical professionals. So I'm just trying to create all of the things I didn't have.
That is fantastic. And where can people learn more about your book and those fabulous resources? Can people buy, let's say, your handbook?
Yes, everything is available on my website. That is the best way to find everything I do and to connect with me. And that's at erincopelan.com. That's Erin with an E, Copelan, no D. Not like the composer, the other way.
I like that. Erin
with an E, Copelan, no D.
I love it. Copelan with it just ending at the end. Good,
yep.
Good. Those are some fabulous resources that at some point all of us are going to need. So congratulations. That sounds really exciting. And I hope that you get that next book out at some point when it's appropriate and come back to us.
Me too.
Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you for having me. It's been such a pleasure to connect with your audience.
It's been fun.